Okay. Hey everyone, welcome back to Landing Your Dream Job. This is our series that we go in and talk about different things related to the job search leading up to our live 2-day event, Landing Your Dream Job Boot Camp. It's a virtual summit that starts next week. So we are in the stretch run of getting everything set up. My name is Dan Roth. I'm going to be your host for today. Jen Sethri, who is our fearless leader, is unfortunately unable to be here today, but I have an incredible guest that is here with us today. She's a fellow New Jerseyan, which I always have to give big props to because it means we're going to get along, potentially have some dry humor, and really have a great time. Carrie Lynn Shaw is her name, and Carrie Lynn is going to let her tell you about herself, but just to give you a high level overview, she is the negotiation expert, the person that you go to if you are looking for a raise but don't know how to get it. Carrie Lynn, please, first of all, welcome. I know this is your first time with us in this particular series. Tell us about yourself, what you do, and what one of the things we've really made a habit of during the last couple of lives is what is your why?
Ooh, good question. Well, why don't I give you a little bit of background and then see if we can't find our way to my why. I spent two-thirds of my career in sales and marketing. I sold cars to pay for college, fell into HR in the last decade of my career, and realized that it was exactly where I was supposed to be. And realized over the years that my why or my purpose was to help people unlock their potential. So, being in an HR function, I had the best of all worlds. I got to drive business results and I got to do it with a people first mindset and help our leaders do better when it comes to leading their people, leading with empathy, with emotional intelligence, helping them understand that you can have head and heart. So, some of the best work I've ever done and most fun I've ever had was in HR. And then 2 years ago, I was interviewing for my next HR gig and thought, all right, I'm going to take these calls from recruiters. That was at a time when recruiters were still calling. And I kept coming in second. And I was like, interesting. What is going on? This is really new. So I realized that I have other gifts to offer the world. And when people meet me, they often say to me, Kale, where were you 20 years ago? Where were you at the beginning of my career? I was not there either in the beginning of my career. And for 2 decades, I trusted the process inside my organization to navigate my career for me on some level and get me paid what I guess I thought was appropriate. I didn't know I could negotiate like most people. And I also was a bit of a passenger seat in driving my career. I would say the one thing that I did focus on was leading with curiosity, leading with grit, leading with a tremendous amount of resilience, and doing great work. And I felt like if I do good work, the money will come. And when you have a sales mindset and a commission mindset, that was the case, right? So I realized it when I fell into HR that there is a whole component here around knowing your worth and getting in the driver's seat of your career. And I now teach people how to do that. So, how to get in the driver's seat, how to take the wheel. And I am sort of their co pilot, if you will, to help them navigate and design the roadmap that they want to, the roadmap of their career that they want to get in charge of and get the money to go along with it. So, I'm incredibly passionate about closing the gender pay gap. I would not say that I work with men and women, but I really feel like I need to do my part and share all the knowledge that I have, which is basically blowing the doors off of HR and helping people to know what the person on the other end is thinking when it comes to the interview, when it comes to how critical your talent reel is, and you won't pass go to get to the negotiation if we don't get that right, and how to secure a more fulfilling career and the money to go with it. So, my why, I suppose, is my purpose is to help people unlock their potential and Just people just don't know how. They don't know they can, they don't know how, or they're afraid if I negotiate, will they pull the offer? And we're here to change that. So
I love that. And for those that don't know, the interview process and teaching you how to interview is a huge part of the boot camp. It's part of our day two if you look at events.entrycareers.com. Now, if Jed was here, I know which direction she would go in, but I'm here. So I'm going to take a couple of liberties. You and I are, there are a couple of things that you said there that we are 100% aligned on, and I really want to deep dive into it. Because first of all, I'm not oblivious to the fact that your company is called the Salary Bump. And as you're talking about narrowing the gender and racial wealth gap, that bump could be taken a multitude of different ways that is directly correlated to the repression that we see on behalf of those that do go through childbirth. So can you talk a little bit about two components? One, I'm going to ask you about the difference in negotiation between men and women, because I think it's a viable component to this, but also what those things are that you see from the gender and racial wealth gap perspective that occur that need to be looked at when somebody is going to negotiate, or even just look at a job in general.
So one of the first things we do with any new client is we try to understand, I need to pick up the hood and understand what your relationship is to money. So a lot of the issues that we have around money are related to how we grew up and whether or not we believe sayings like filthy rich or money doesn't grow on trees. So I need to understand if they have a scarcity mindset or an abundant mindset. And the goal is to move people to an abundant mindset so they can walk into their negotiation with confidence. In addition to helping them know what the person on the other end is thinking, understanding your relationship to money is really important. So that's step one. And once we unpack that, it becomes much easier for us to then put you in the driver's seat. So I would say that's my answer to that. And I think the other key thing is what a lot of people don't understand is that there is so much more beyond the salary. So the compensation bump didn't sound quite as cute when I was launching my brand or my product. So it became the salary bump, but there is so much beyond the salary that most people are not aware of. So I can give you an example. I worked with an automotive technician, and he was an hourly worker. He had a commission structure and he had PTO, and that was it. That was his package. And he became a master technician, which is a really difficult certification to get. And technician turnover rate is about 50%. So for dealers to keep automotive technicians is really hard. And to have a master tech in your store is also rare. So he loved the dealership group that he's working with. And he said, Kale, I'd really love to come up with a way to get more money and earn more because I want to continue to grow here. And they love me. I love them. Super. So my thought was, how do I get more per hour? And I said, well, that's a start. So certainly we want to go there because now that you've got your master certification, we have to research what's the range that master certs get. But beyond that, you're working for a dealer group, which means a company car is a very viable solution. So what are you paying right now for your car, for your insurance, and your gas? $1,700 a month, Dan, is what he was paying out of pocket after tax. So as we were building his package, we also lifted up the hood and understood what he values. And he values hard work. He values showing up for work every day, and he knows he's really good. And so he wanted to be paid for his results. So we took a look at the bonus structure. And what we ended up doing was co-creating a new bonus structure that he got paid more as he delivered more. Then we talked about PTO. He had 15 days. He wanted more because vacations were really important to him as well. And having personal time with his family was very important to him. So we went in with a pitch on more per hour. We co-created this beautiful bonus program. 3 additional weeks of PTO, which is money in his pocket, right? So that is real dollars in his pocket because he's an hourly paid. Then we got him a company car, insurance and gas we put on the table. And last but not least, we got him and his wife's health care paid for, which was $1,000 a month. So what we got him was significant. And I say this because most people don't see beyond that. And when you get an offer, and I've sat in the chair, I've made thousands of offers in my career, you get what the salary is, potentially what the bonus is, and PTO, maybe equity, depends on the size of the company that you're working with and the level that you are. And that's all HR gives you. HR doesn't tell you if there's personal development stipend, home office stipend. There are so many factors. Childcare, perhaps they do that. Tuition reimbursement, perhaps they pay tuition that if you have student loans, they might pay that. So there is a long list of things that people just aren't thinking about to include in their package or to ask about. And when you're asked, what are your salary expectations? People back themselves into a corner because they answer the question the wrong way. And they answer it based on, well, here's what I'm currently making. And they give a dollar amount, or they just say a dollar amount, even if it's not what they're currently making. And that is the biggest mistake people make. So part of what you will learn in this boot camp is how to answer that question properly, how to have a win-win conversation around money and your package, and have it come across that this isn't the only thing that's important, obviously, making an impact. And we got this far. You want me, I want you, rock and roll. Let's make a deal. And to create a win-win environment and not have this combative approach, which when you think of negotiation, when I think of negotiation, I think of attorneys. I think of there's a winner and there's a loser. That is not what this kind of negotiation is, because the goal from my seat as an HR leader is to make you feel valued, because you're now joining our organization. So if I'm coming in it with a win-lose scenario, I'm pretty sure that's not an organization you want to be part of. It is a mutual dialogue that we land so everybody feels valued. And that is the work that I do with my clients.
Okay, so I have to pause for a second because of how much you just put out there. And I want to give everybody the opportunity to sort of internalize that, because what you just provided is tangible advice. And let's be real, on these platforms, there's a lot of talk, there's not a lot of tangibility. So I appreciate what you said. I want to share something with the audience, but before I do, you mentioned researching what you should be making. I put out salary.com and levels.fyi in the chat. Are there any other sites that you recommend for people to look in?
You want me to share all my secrets, Dan?
Only if you want to. I mean, that's up to you.
So yes, there are so many, but my favorite tool is Salary Navigator on ChatGPT, because it will pull multiple sources for you. So depending on the level, it might pull from Korn Ferry, it'll pull salary.com. There's many sources, and it's a simple Google search for you to figure out what those sources are. But getting grounded to the salary range is so critical, because a lot of people, I shouldn't say, we haven't normalized the conversation around money, Dan, right? We don't go to a cocktail party and be like, so what do you make? We have to start normalizing the conversation so that we get an understanding. The hard part is every company has a different comp philosophy, if they even have one, depending on the size of the company, whether it is a startup, whether it's a mid-size, whether it's a big size, you don't always know. So to get grounded, that's why the range is so important, to get grounded to that. It helps you to have a greater understanding. And I will also say some companies will post, depending if they're in one of the states that's required, but I don't buy those ranges. Those ranges are often what's budgeted, not what's researched. So it's really important that you do your homework on the range. And then the work we need to do in the initial phase is making sure you know your value, so you get to mid to the high end of that range, and the right things that you want to ask in the interview So people are, help me understand what a candidate needs to deliver to be at the high end of that range.
Absolutely.
And then you write those notes down and you ensure in your interview that you are talking to those points, then shows that you are someone who would be at the high end. And if they don't offer you at the high end, we're like, okay, well, we talked about the things that were important to you in a person who'd be paid at the high end. And those are things, of course, we talked about that I deliver. So let's talk about that, right? So there's just having a more normal conversation around it is the goal.
So I want to provide everybody a couple pieces of information, and then we do have some questions in the chat that we'll get to in a second. But first of all, when a lot of these companies are doing this, Carrie Lynn mentioned that they haven't done the research. Certain companies look at geographic areas. So if you are in the most highly populated or most expensive area, you may be a level 1, right below that level 2, so on and so forth. Companies may be looking to fill a level 2 or level 3, so they're not having to pay that highest range even when they have it set up. So they may be looking for cities like San Diego, or I'm just using an example, Dallas, as opposed to a New York or LA where they have to pay that top level amount. The second thing is, you said, let's talk about it. So I'm going to tell you exactly what happened with my negotiation with Amazon, and I'll throw out numbers because I think this is a really good example that we could use. So with Amazon, the structure was base salary, bonus, and equity. Now, the way that they had it was you had a base salary range that you could be in, and then you had the bonus structure. And if it was under 19,000, you could get a payout at once. If it was over 19,000, then it would be payout as part of your average salary. And then the way that the equity worked is, first year you got 5%, and then every 6 months after that you got an additional percentage. Now, what they didn't tell you is that they're not going to offer you all the way at the top of the range for the base salary. And the bonus structure, which this part they did, but this is the part that really throws people off, is you had, let's say you had a bonus of 50,000 for year 1. Well, next year is 40,000. And then after year 2, that drops off as your equity increases, but you actually have to pull out your equity and get charged taxes in order for that to even work. So whereas I may have been scheduled at 170,000 by year 3, the reality is I'm getting 120 or 125. And then if I want to reach that 160 mark, I have to sell off stocks. And these are things that, again, are not necessarily considered because either people aren't aware of them or otherwise. So the way that I've always recommended, I'm curious to hear your thoughts, is I tell people, if you are going into a negotiation, have 3 different types of offers that you would be happy with: 1 high base, 1 high bonus, or 1 high equity. That way you're dictating the back and forth instead of being told what you should be getting. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. And that's a real number situation, everybody. I was making 166 per year at Amazon for the first 2 years as a level 5 recruiter. So there's your information.
Really interesting. I haven't done any negotiations for anyone at Amazon. Was it clear when you were made the offer that this was the scenario, that it would drop off?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It was. So I was a contractor, and I chose to be a contractor for a year, went through the full interview process, and then there was the knowledge that it would drop off. Now, for somebody like me, I'm more cash focused. I would rather have a higher base amount so that I have more stability within the family dynamic. That bonus structure, the bonus is very misleading because bonuses obviously get, well, I'm not going to say obviously, but they get taxed differently. So there's a lot of components to consider. Now, one of the things is there wasn't necessarily the room to negotiate on things like insurance or PTO unless you're at executive level. So if you are let's say mid-level or below, you're not going to have that opportunity to negotiate those specific aspects. I know that because I recruited executive level roles. Um, so if, for instance, my wife is a part of a union, so we have really great insurance. I didn't need that, but they didn't give me the ability to negotiate
Mm.
that as a component of it.
Yeah. So I guess it's really a question of whether they allow it or they don't, or whether you just don't ask. So in my experience, most people just don't ask. So they don't know whether or not, listen, I don't need healthcare benefits. Do you know what it costs for an average employee to offer benefits? If so, can we talk about including that in my salary? Because it's not something I will ever need. That's not a conversation most people would have. So you're a recruiter, you're in a different situation. So if Amazon says, no, we don't negotiate, you don't negotiate. But my experience is that clients are just not asking. They're not asking. They just don't know what all those levers are, or they just get nervous. So knowing the full package obviously is super important, and understanding what this drop off situation is and the tax implications of then having to sell off your equity. That's part of doing your homework and being educated on what the offer is. Again, I think a lot of people get so excited. I want the job. And in this scarce mindset market right now, people are in more of a desperate situation. And so they're saying yes to things that perhaps if they had done their homework, they wouldn't say yes to. You asked.
Sorry, really, really quickly, and I don't mean to interrupt,
Okay.
but Andrew was actually asking, because you brought up the scarcity mindset, can you have an abundance mindset yet be in a scarcity situation?
Of course. Absolutely. And that's part of the work you do, inside your own head, working with a coach, helping you with your mindset, helping you get grounded so you don't end up being in a panic situation. And look, I think that the goal is to just make conscious decisions. And if it's a conscious decision that I'm going to take this, I have an abundant mindset, but I need for my house not to get foreclosed on. So I am going to take this role as a temporary function while I still look. So as long as it's conscious, I fully support that everybody has a different scenario and different needs.
And I realize I interrupted you because I wanted to make sure we got that in, but I know that you were going towards another area when I interrupted.
Yeah, you had asked me about your recommendation of saying go in with 3 scenarios. I always want to make sure that clients know what the total comp picture is. That again is market based, and also them knowing their value and what they would be really happy with. So my 3 scenarios are that what I'd be happy with, what I would be very happy with, and what I'd be over the moon with. And our goal is to get you over the moon. But the happy is the low end of the range that you're going to accept. And again, that can be not just a salary range, but a total comp range. So we only talk in total comp because you're going to flow through those different levers, right? But you said something else interesting. If having more secure base, if safety is one of their values, which is why we do the values part at the very beginning, if safety is one of your values, well, having a higher base and lower on the bonus might make you more comfortable. So that's where you're going to flex. If you're more comfortable on, I'm going all in, I believe so much in this company, I believe in myself, I'm going to rock and roll, I'm okay with the base being lower, and I'm going to take that risk. Again, that's a conscious choice, but it's really based on you. And so that's how I approach it. But to your point, going in, knowing what those levers are, and then knowing what that total comp picture is. I give all of my clients a 1-pager that lists their current package. That includes what your cost of healthcare is. That includes every single benefit that you have. And I list out every benefit that is possible. So we can do a side-by-side comparison, because people will get a bump in salary, for example, and not have asked about the cost of healthcare. And unlike you, not everybody has that, right? They don't need to worry about it. Well, guess what? Your whole salary bump could just go right now to the toilet because your cost of healthcare just increased. And in my career, Dan, not one person has ever asked me for the cost of healthcare. Good HR gives it to you proactively and explains what the cost per month is. But no one has ever asked me for it. It's not something that's front of mind for people. So I would just really hate for you to throw away the bump that you're negotiating by now increasing your cost of healthcare.
No, absolutely. You bring up a really great point, and I love how detailed you are about it. So I have two questions for you, and then I want to go to some more questions from the audience, and then we're going to go through the boot camp just to give everybody a lay of the land as far as expectations go. So one of the hot topics lately has been the RTO mandates that are starting to be implemented.
Yeah.
From a negotiation perspective, is remote work something that you feel is realistically able to be negotiated into an offer?
Heck yeah. Absolutely. I mean, look, the statistics are pretty alarming that 95% of CEOs are saying they're going to be back in office full time by 2025. I'm super alarmed by it. In fact, I had a call from a recruiter today about a chief people officer role, which I'm not, entirely interested in going back into corporate. I love what I'm doing, but I thought, I'll take the call. Maybe someone in my network. And she said, okay, I live in northern New Jersey. The job is in Brooklyn, and that it's mandated that everybody needs to be in Brooklyn 3 days a week. And I was like, listen, I've done the commute to the Empire State Building for 4 years, 3 hours door to door. I am not interested in adding another hour each way for me to get to Brooklyn. So the answer would be an absolute no. But I said, what I'm even more intrigued by is why, when you came out of the pandemic, why back in office? Why 3 days a week? And how is that improving your business? She couldn't answer the question. She didn't ask it. If there isn't a why behind it, your people do not want to be part of it. So I want to work, if I were to go back into corporate and the fractional work that I do, I want to work with CEOs that have intentionality behind the decisions that they make. And when it comes to return to office, that's one of them. So if I have a team of 10 people and I tell them 3 days a week, come in whenever you want, it's fine, and we're all randomly in and out, we're not improving our teamwork. We're not improving our connection. We are not being intentional about the time that we're spending together live in person. So if that's not part of the thought process, that's a company that doesn't really intrigue me. Now, I understand candidates are in situations where more and more companies are wanting people to be back in office. And if remote is something that's really important to you, it's part of your values, again, that we do at the beginning, well, then you are not going to be attracted to companies who are forcing you in office 5 days a week or that don't have intentionality behind it. So it's more about you really understanding what lights your fire, what really is going to inspire you to do your best work. And if remote is one of them, then you're going to have to understand that those will be less jobs that you're looking for. And if you're okay to be in office, then you can say, listen, here's where I live. Is there flexibility that I come in 2 days instead of 3 days? That would really mean a lot to me. And I think I can be just as productive or more productive being from home. I would say 100% yes to negotiate that, because it's, from me as a modern HR leader, an easy gift, an easy win that costs me zero, but costs me a lot of fantastic goodwill from my people. But that's a modern HR with an HR leader that understands how important this is for people. If I'm working in a company where it's 3 days a week, 4 days a week, no, we're not discussing this, you're going to have less likelihood to have that flexibility. But always ask. Absolutely.
Yeah, and one of the things that I realize as you're talking about that, when you talk about the example of Brooklyn, is let's not forget the amount of tolls if you're going to actually drive yourself and what that daily cost is, and being able to build that in, because
Yeah.
like you're talking $25-$30 a day,
Mm-hmm.
not even including the time that you're spending. That's a huge chunk. Listen, everyone, if you want my personal opinion on the return to work mandate, take a look at my post from last night. This is what Carrie Lynn just did is so much nicer than I'm willing to get, in my opinion, on this. All I'll say is I believe that return to work mandates are a form of corporate weaponization. But if I get into this, that's going to be a different conversation. Before we get into the question, I have one other thing that I wanted to bring up because you brought it up earlier. It's something that is part of my everyday work and something I'm extremely passionate about, yet I don't get to talk to a lot of people about it. So I'm taking this opportunity. Narrowing the gender and racial wealth gap. If we look at recent statistics, we know that Black men and women are 56 cents on the dollar to 66 cents on the dollar. If we look at wives are only making about 60 cents on the dollar to every dollar that their husbands are making. I understand this is a loaded question, but from a negotiation standpoint, from a strategic standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, how do we start to realize and then narrow that gap?
Everybody has to do their part, Dan. So it starts with organizations getting serious about it and having a true compensation philosophy. And every role that I've ever taken over as a chief people officer, the very first thing I do is an equity analysis. And we right the ship. I don't know how many HR leaders are doing that because every time that I've done it, it has been a mess. So does that mean that previous HR leaders didn't have that as a priority? I don't know. And I'm not saying that everybody gets a raise inside the organization. We have to be thoughtful about how we do that. But doing an equity analysis is extremely important because it goes a long way in building trust with your employees as well, right? So that's step one. Step two is I'm a big proponent of coaching people on how to get in the driver's seat. Nobody's just rarely will they tap you on the shoulder and say, oh, we made a mistake on your salary. So we're just going to give you a raise to get you where you need to be. That's not happening on the regular. So until that starts happening, we can't depend on our company to do right by us. I hope they are. The companies that I worked, we did. But you can't wait for that. So get in the driver's seat and start asking. And start negotiating like a man. Stop not applying for the job because you don't hit 100% of the requirements. Start asking, knowing your worth, first of all, and start asking. I will tell you the statistics of people that don't ask are alarming. It's 50%, less than 50% of people, that includes men and women. And it's less than a third of women that are asking. So if every woman just started asking, we would close the gap.
The thing I keep going back to as you're talking is how empowering you are. And I'm not saying that to blow up your ego. I'm saying it because first of all, we don't see a lot of women talking about this because there's a certain decolonization that is still occurring and peeling back those layers of generational trauma that leads to not asking. And then when we look at the return to work and we look at these items like I'm going down a path, but I saw we have extra time, so I'm cool with that. When we look at all these different items, it's a lot easier to say you need to speak up than it actually is. And even, I mean, this goes into, the uneven dispersion of emotional labor in the workplace. From a tactical level, it goes into the fact that the pandemic and remote workforces removed a lot of the visible bias that occurred from women that may be pregnant because it wasn't visual every day or menopausal or period. These are all things that we don't necessarily talk about, but are very much face bias within the corporate in-person dynamic. So as we talk about this return to work, as we talk about the negotiation, we're also talking about the return to trauma for a lot of individuals, and that has to be taken into account. If you are going to say, I have to return to work, then you need to pay me not just what my salary is, but for what I'm going to have to go through from a mental health perspective.
If you're willing to go through it, right? So I think, you have mental health behind you. The pandemic taught us a lot, and this is what makes me so sick about CEOs pushing everybody back to office. It's really, it's really saddening to me that I recognize that we're in this shareholder culture of every 3 months, every 3 months, every 3 months. And it's a very easy lever for CEOs to pull. Like, oh, we had a rough quarter, so yeah, we're going to bring everybody back into office because that's the problem. That is not the problem, friends. The problem is we don't have clear vision. We don't have clear expectations. We don't communicate properly. We don't have transparency. We don't have trust. There's a lot of reasons why we don't hit our numbers. And it's deeply troubling to me that that's the lever that keeps getting pulled. And then the next quarter and the next quarter and the next quarter, once they pull that lever and it still doesn't go up, they're not going and saying, oh, well, we made a mistake. Maybe it really wasn't about people coming into office. So you said I'm nicer than you, and you said that we're both from New Jersey, but I'm actually Canadian. So
Yes,
I will
know.
always take this slightly, less. Yeah, I want to be really aggressive about this situation because it's maddening. It's so maddening, but it's the reality of where we are. So as employees, we can do what we can do. We can not go back into, I mean, a lot of women are exiting the workforce. Such a shame, such a deep shame, but they're going out on their own. That's what I did. And I'm not sure I will ever look back. And so there's something to be said for that as well. But I think it really comes down to knowing that you can and having the tools in your toolkit to know how to have this conversation so that you don't lead with fear, because a lot of the things that are getting in our way in life is fear. And I don't want people to have fear around this topic. This is actually a really beautiful topic. When we get to the negotiation, what people forget, Dan, is they already said they want me. They want me. It's like, so you're in the driver's seat. It's just, I think just so people just don't realize it. So lots more on this topic that I know we will get to in the boot camp, and loading people's lips and loading their toolkits to go out there and find a job that actually really fulfills them, and the money to go with it.
Absolutely. I do want to acknowledge, Amy made a comment in the chat that, we always talk about linguistics and how words matter. And her comment was, please don't call it return to work. Remote workers are working. And if that term gets back in the vocabulary of corporations, they'll assume that they aren't.
Yeah.
Use something like use something that doesn't punish the remote workers, like return to office. Amy, I want to say that I acknowledge and value what you just said. We get so repetitive in the choices that we use that reframing often is not considered, but it is definitely heard what you're referring to. Now, Carrie Lynn, one of the reasons that this entire thing upsets me so much is if we look at the data, there's no data that I've been able to find, no research I've been able to find that shows that return to office is actually beneficial other than a reduced cost. And for me, as a neurodiverse individual that suffers from social anxiety, working from home allows me to create my ideal work environment where I am most productive. And the data does show that the average person can only focus for about 88 minutes before they need about a 20-minute break. So this entire ideology behind the 9 to 5 is, I mean, I was going to use an example that I shouldn't, and out of respect for Jen, I'm not going to, but it's BS.
Mm-hmm.
Now, switching gears a little bit, Andrew asked a question, and I know he's not the only one from the previous boot camp that wants to know. When we're talking about fractional work, when we are talking about contract work, what is the best way to determine how much somebody should be asking for, either on a monthly basis, weekly basis, or hourly basis as a fractional contract employee?
Every scenario is different. It's really hard to answer that question, Andrew. I need to know your specific details, but you can back into it simply to say, this is the total comp package that I am worth, right? What's my value on the market? Do your homework, get that total number, whatever that number is. Back that out from a day rate perspective to see what would my day rate need to be in order for me to hit that. And then, of course, in being fractional, you know that you're not working that number of days likely inside an organization. So you either need to have multiple fractional jobs, or if it's one, you just need to be super clear how long is that going to happen. You need to plus it up a little bit. So I'd need to understand your specific details, but an easier way to do that is to back it out and look at your per day. I also really love Andrew's note about flailing teenagers inside an elevator with a bee. It's what it feels like, Andrew. And part of the reason, I love the fractional HR work that I do, because I get to work with amazing CEOs and advise them on these really important topics that really matter to people. It got exhausting inside corporate of being the one person to carry the people torch. And I want to work with like-minded leaders that put people first. So those are the kind of leaders I work with.
Andrew is the data cowboy. He's one of our individuals from our initial cohort. We could definitely put you in contact with him if you are open to.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, and he's not the only one from our previous bootcamp that's looking at fractional work. Donna Brown, who I'm personally working with, is doing that as well. So we are seeing a lot of people. And the point that I want to make to everyone out there is, it is great to become an entrepreneur. The more entrepreneurs we have, the more chances there are that there's going to be people in leadership positions that are able to make changes and create foundations that other companies are able to mimic. So if you create the right foundation, if you create the right infrastructure, and you're able to be profitable, then that's going to set a tone that's going to have a wide dynamic. And right now, there's less, I believe, my data could be wrong, there's less than 5 Black men and women and the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. But the more entrepreneurs go out there, the more opportunity that they have to make something big and create change. Remember, when this is coming from me, not from Jen, it's one thing to be an ally. It's a different thing to be an accomplice in change. And if you don't know what I'm referring to break it down really quickly, is an ally is somebody that supports a cause. An accomplice is somebody that goes in, understands the dangers that are associated with it, and tries and fights to make change. Yeah. So I'm going to put that out there. Valeska, if you could do me a favor and pull up our screen. And while she's doing that, I want to acknowledge that we have some incredible leaders in the audience. We have Lindsay Dowd, who is one of our coaches and experts. Actually, yeah, I'll just start on the screen. We have Andrew Gibbs, who is one of our former cohort members and is doing just amazing job. Gabe Leal, who is one of my best guy friends in the world, and really somewhat revolutionary in the live video game. We have Anna Lang, who is our mindset guru. So we have a tremendous amount of people. So I want to talk about the bootcamp, why you should sign up. I want to start by saying these are the people. So Jennifer C3 is the founder of Entry and Resume Technology. And I will never, it's a little small, hard to see. I need to zoom in. Okay, I can zoom in. Lindsay, let me know if this is better. Live happens, folks. So Jennifer C3, again, is the CEO of Entry, and I'm never going to do as good of a job at describing Entry as a service as she will. So if you want to learn more about Entry, we could definitely go into that. But I really want to focus on the individuals that are going to be there. So we have Jennifer, we have Gina Riley. Gina is a LinkedIn top voice. She is one of the top experts in the world. Lindsay, I just mentioned, Carrie Lynn, who you're meeting today, Lauren Sermon. If you don't know Lauren, check out her Friday lives. It's tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. Claire Davis is one of the revolutionary medical device experts in the world. She is one of the she's one of the first people I met, and one of my role models. Tanya King Floyd Donna is actually not going to be with us for this particular event. Um, so we apologize. Anna Lang, motivational speaker, Helen Godfrey, another one of our mindset coaches, as well as Lisa Hammett, Jessica Coppens. If I pronounced that wrong, I apologize. And then myself, I realized I didn't really get into specifics about what I do, but I'm a former Amazon recruiter. My focus is on people operations and strategic and organizational strategy, uh, as well as being a consultant. So, what does this boot camp look like, and who will it benefit? The honest answer is it's going to benefit anybody. What we do is really a comprehensive job at looking at each element of the job search and put you in a position to succeed. It is a whirlwind of information, but all very digestible. So I'm going to read this because, why not? Uh, Uncertain how to navigate emerging job search technologies, discontent your current role, aspiring to advance your career, but requiring strategic direction. If all of these things or any of these things are relevant to you, you may be a good fit. There's Jen, our fearless leader, who will be back next Tuesday. During this 48-hour intensive, you're going to get personal branding and LinkedIn optimization. Lindsay really leads the way on it, does a great job. Career coaching from people like Carrie Lynn, Tanya, and others. Resume writing. Entry is a resume writing platform. We're going to be really setting everybody up with those accounts. Optimize your resume creation for ATS. LinkedIn branding. Hello, Lindsay, once again. Leveraging hiring technologies. Network coaching. That's one of my specializations, as well as recruiter and HR engagement. Lauren does a tremendous job with this. Interview coaching and preparation. As you've heard from Carrie Lynn, there's so many nuggets to drop. Mental health coaching. Look behind me. CRM for application tracking and executive plan. I went through our coaches. We understand challenges in the current market, bringing together top-tier experts to provide you an arsenal of tools, strategies, and insights. Our collective experience includes coaching, resume building, personal branding, and more. If you want to read what participants are saying, including Mr. Andrew, the data cowboy, take a look. Almost every member of the boot camp from the first cohort is now either working with or alongside one of the coaches. And that really goes to show what is so great about this dynamic. And then on the website, you'll also be able to see the detailed schedule, so you could see exactly what you're going to be doing on each day. And then follow up. Once you're part of our network, you're not leaving our networks. And that is such an invaluable resource, because people often ask the question of, what do you do first? Where do I go? And this is going to answer it and give you the tools needed to succeed, not just now, but in the long term. And then you can check out all of our lives that we've done by going to this page, and you can see all of us speaking here. I'm going to remove this. If you are interested, and you should be, go to events.entrycareers.com. It's right in my label, and sign up. It does start next week, and it's going to be a great experience. And the last question I'm going to answer is this for somebody in their job search or somebody in the middle, where they're going through a career transition? It's for all of the above. Whether you are a brand new job seeker, an executive looking to level up, or otherwise, this is an incredible dynamic that will support you. And that's really what we love to see. And, we have members of our first cohort that went in thinking one thing and wound up realizing that they were meant to do something different, and they now feel empowered to do it. So it's a really beautiful thing. And, if listening to Carrie Lynn has shown anything, and seeing people like Lindsay Dowd and Anna Lang and Jen and Gina and everybody, it's that the people that are here are not here for a paycheck. They're here because they genuinely, pardon my French, give a shit, and they want to see you succeed. And there's no greater feeling than going into a situation knowing that you're in a heart-centered environment. Okay, that was the most talking that I am going to do today. Um, because I really want to bring it back to you, Carrie Lynn. We've gone through quite a bit of information, and I'm looking and seeing a lot of what people are saying. One thing that I had in my notes to bring up is you specialize in talent reel.
Hmm.
I don't even know what that is. So can you elaborate on talent reel and how this applies to the job search?
That's the old fashioned elevator pitch. What I say to my clients is if you don't get that right and you don't connect with the person on the other end in that first couple of minutes, you won't make it to the negotiation. So we don't even need to worry about that. So there's 3 questions I ask every client and would do so obviously in the boot camp. And that is, what do you love? What are you innately good at? And how are you, or do you want to make an impact on the world? And those 3 questions, along with what you value, help us understand who you are. Because when someone says to tell you about themselves, tell me about yourself, that's the first question you will get in almost every interview, in a networking event, at a cocktail party. So, who are you? You need to know how to answer that question. And it's not easy to build it, but it is the most crucial part of the work that we do together because you need to find a way to connect. I will say one last thing, Dan. So talent reel is something we would talk about in the boot camp. Um, I have had situations where people have had offers pulled because they didn't negotiate. And I recognize that that's perhaps a little bit of an extreme situation, but in a CFO situation, I did a podcast with a recruiter and she told me about a situation where a CFO was made an offer. She accepted without negotiating, and then they rescinded it 24 hours later because she didn't negotiate. Don't underestimate the fact that if you are going for a sales role, a leadership role, client facing role, client relations role, so many functions you are required to negotiate. And the person on the other end wants to see how you're going to do that and how best to show that, then negotiate for yourself. So, how you show up to that is more crucial than you realize.
So I found myself shaking my head, assuming I knew what you were going to say. And then I realized I had never heard of that before. And I'm like, wait a second. That's crazy to me. It makes sense,
Mm.
but that's crazy that somebody would get it pulled. Um, Speaking of getting things pulled, because this is a good lead in, with the amount of people still searching for work, and you mentioned that before about you're getting the offer, they clearly have chosen you. If you negotiate too hard in the state of the market where there's so many people out there that are searching for work of high quality,
Mm.
is there more of a risk now than there was 5, 6 years ago to have an offer pulled if you negotiate too much?
It's a really hard question to answer, Dan. I think there's an essence in how you want to show up in a negotiation that is not negotiating too hard. It's planting the right seeds. It's having the right conversations at the right time around what the comp philosophy is, around the package. Um, you want to be smart about the negotiation. You want to be non-emotional about the negotiation. You want to make it factual, but not aggressive. So in any environment, I think you need to be thoughtful about that. And you need to know when to pull back if it starts not feeling right. Um, I, I I can't answer that question. It's really hard for me to answer it because my heart tells me no. That negotiation is negotiation, regardless of how tough the market is, and that's a scarcity mindset. So I don't want you walking into an interview with a scarcity mindset. Just like there's a scarcity mindset around how terrible the job market is. I don't want people with that thought process. Joining this boot camp helps you propel forward and gives you all the tools and the confidence you need to be able to go out there with the right mindset as well as the toolkit. And that's ultimately the goal. I don't want people thinking about those possible scenarios. I want you to go in and be you and be thoughtful and get what you deserve.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think the scarcity mindset is it. It's hard to get away from sometimes, and in full transparency, something I struggle with. And I think that's part of the grind when it comes to searching for jobs and figuring out how to reframe things so that in spite of potential negativity that you could still remain positive. Uh, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath. Before we go, I want to acknowledge a couple things. One is Valeska Silva is our person behind the scenes. She is the right hand within Entry. She puts everything together, creates the materials. We would not be here without her. She's going to yell at me, and well, not yell at me, but she's going to yell at me privately about, because I always embarrass her. But tremendous human being. I want to thank Jennifer Sethri, our fearless leader, for trusting me to be here today and fill in, frankly, shoes that I have no business trying to fill. One of the things that I think is common throughout the conversation that we've had here today, but hasn't necessarily been directly said, is how important and how critical mental health is when it comes to all of this. Because whether we're talking about the gender and racial wealth gap, whether we're talking about the negotiation strategy, every single bit of this takes has a place, an emotional toll that is going to take. And as we enter the final day or two of the week, I have to remind everyone, whether you are a job seeker, whether you're in a current role, please take care of your mental health. It's the most important thing you could do for yourself. And if you do need help, if you need support, please seek it out. We are, whether it's me, whether it's somebody else, or whether it's friends or family, don't stay quiet. That's a personal request. Next week, we are going to be back on Tuesday. I believe Jen will be back at that point. And if you are interested, feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to go to events.entrycareers.com. Lindsay has put it in the chat. I want to thank Carrie Lynn Shaw for being here today. KL, you are such an amazing addition to this team. And frankly, I've learned a lot from you today. So I have a lot to sit with and kind of introspect with the things that you've said. And that's a blessing that you've given me. Before we exit, is there any last piece of advice or statement that you would want to leave our audience with?
I would say go all in and bet on yourself. I hired 4 coaches for myself this year. And it's the best investment I've ever given to myself. I'm betting on me, nobody else. I'm not betting on my company to do it for me, or my spouse to lift me up, or friends. No, I'm in the driver's seat. I'm taking the wheel. And I think that's just my advice to everyone. Don't wait. Go for it. Join the boot camp. If not the boot camp, get somebody to help you. Because it's far more fun to have a roadie next to you. But, to really kickstart this, I think it's an incredible investment. Not to mention, I think it's a very low investment for what you're getting from this bootcamp.
Thank you so much. On behalf of Jen Sethri, the Entry team, and all the coaches that are part of the bootcamp, thank you so much for watching. Have an easy and relaxing rest of the day. And if we don't talk to you before then, fantastic weekend. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time.